Welcome to the Romancing Like Swift podcast, where we talk craft and the business of being an author while fangirling over Taylor Swift. We're your hosts, Morgana Bevan
and Emily Jane. On this podcast, we'll discuss what authors can learn from Taylor Swift. There are many amazing Taylor Swift podcasts in existence. We know this, but our focus is on mining Taylor Swift's lyrics and business practices for tips to help our fellow authors excel in their careers.
Today, we're taking a look at all the ways Taylor Swift collaborates with other artists, and especially after Untitled Poet Department has released, we're noticing her choices are a lot more selective on Untitled Poets Department at the time of recording, which is in May. She may release remixes in the next few months before this airs and catch us off guard. But right now, there's just the two. Is it just two?
Yes, it's just two.
There's only two additional artists on Touch Poets Department, and then the name drop of Charlie Puth. So it's got us thinking really about how in other albums she's felt the need to do a lot more cross-promotion and collaboration with other artists, maybe to launch the album harder. And as we discussed in last week's episode, this album seems to more be a personal reckoning for Taylor. Like, she's doing this for herself, maybe not so much with the thought of what it does for herself in pushing the album. Whereas us as authors, if we can take an action that's going to help us further a book launch, we'll take it.
But in addition to the marketing, there are all kinds of artistic, creative reasons why you might want to have a collaborative relationship with other creatives as well. I think in general, it fuels your creativity to have someone else in the sandbox with you. I think it really helps. And I have a lot of experience with it. So as we're talking today about Taylor's interaction, I will chime in with my experiences and how I think it can benefit authors and other creatives to work with other people.
Will we quickly go through some of the benefits of collaborations? I think because as authors, it's such a solitary thing. Like, we sit in a room and we write, and generally people don't get what we're doing and they don't understand it when we start talking about the characters speaking in our heads. And then we meet up with other authors and we go off on major tangents, and every single time I sit down with another author, it's like, I don't get to do this. It feels incredible to like sit down and just talk to somebody who gets it. And I think a lot of the benefits of this is going to be the fact that, like, yes, you could all come from different viewpoints, but as you say, it's like there's a creative well that sitting down with another author unlocks, or maybe the restraints you put on yourself when you're not with another author block you in some way.
I'm not sure which it is, but I do agree that there is magic to talking with other authors and hearing how their process works, even if your process is totally different. When you're transitioning from, I want to be a writer, but I know no other writers, to the moment that door of other writers opens and you're in a room with other writers and you can talk to these people about the need to tell story and how characters talk to you and where you get your inspiration from. Once you start unpacking all of that with other people, it is truly magical. It's unlike anything else. I equate it to, we're all drug addicts and we're getting high together because the emotional, like, dopamine rush you get from chatting with other authors is incredible.
I guess there's a moral support to it, and obviously the networking aspect. You've also then got the more practical side of it, like it's increased visibility, you're doing cross-promotion. If you all write in a shared world, every author participating in that shared world is going to be pushing the marketing for it.
And just there's a practicality from the writing standpoint also, being able to say like, hey, I have this problem either in my actual writing of books, but in editorial or whatever. What are your solutions to it? Like talking about the nuts and bolts of what it is to sit down at a laptop every day and crank out words. So there's benefits from a marketing and business side point, and then there's benefits from a purely practical, creative side point, and benefits from a technical nuts and bolts writing side of it.
But then you've also got like the skill sharing.
Yes.
Sitting down with the problem. Sometimes that problem is just the fact that you struggle to write action scenes, but you're really good at dialogue. So you team up with somebody who's really good at the things you're weaker at. And then you, as a whole, fill in all the gaps.
Yes. I do this a lot with my longtime critique partner, partner in crime, brainstorming partner, best friend, Kat Baxter. So she is great at snappy dialogue and sexual chemistry and sex in general. And I'm better at world building. So there are definitely times when she needs me to come in and be like, okay, this scene is great, but they're all talking heads. Let's give them a location. And she's like, it's not there in my head. And I'm like, it's okay. It's there in my head automatically. We've been friends for like 30 years now, and we're at that level where I can just like jump in and describe a room for her if she needs me to.
See, I need things like that. I'm so bad at descriptions. I don't see people. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to describe this person, and it's been half a book and I've never described them.
Yeah, and I'm not intuitively good at it. I need to find pictures of characters and I need to find pictures of locations. But once I have that in my head, it's important for me to know it to block it out, to create the full picture in my mind. I can jump in with things and add them in for her stuff. And one of the nice things about when I'm collaborating with her versus when I'm writing for my own stuff, when I'm collaborating with her, I do a really good job of giving the bare minimum of what the scene needs to move it forward. I don't bog it down. If I'm writing my own stuff, I tend to over describe. And then she'll need to come in as my critique partner and read it and be like, okay, let's have a little less discussion of the history of Austin and why this particular architectural style applies to this house. We can just call it a bungalow and move on. And I'm like, okay, fair, fair. We don't need to know the entire history of the neighborhood.
Yeah. That's hilarious. On the other side of it, there's the shared workload. If you're co-writing, it's a shared
Yes.
workload. Like somebody else is there to help you divide up the to-do list and do the marketing and everything else that comes with writing books, because it's
Yes.
not
Yeah.
just about writing the book.
Yes. And for me, this is part of the shared workload, but it's also just the shared vibe of working with someone else. I don't know about you, Morgana, but sometimes I get tired of being my only coworker. When I show up at work, I am tired of Emma on some days. Emma's a bit of a drag every once in a while. And I'm like, God, I'm so tired of dealing with you. Why is it you all the time? And it's me all the time because it's me. When we're writers, we typically don't have the experience of working with other people on a day to day basis. And the emotional energy we're bringing to a project is always the same emotional energy. And it's really great to have every once in a while to collaborate with another writer and get to show up to work with someone else. So, like about a decade ago, I worked on a book with Shelley Roberts and Tracy Wolf, and we're writing it together. And I got to tell you, Tracy Wolf shows up to work every morning with like this booming excitement for the project. And we would show up to co-write on days that when we were physically co-writing in the same space. And I would walk in and I'd be like, well, I don't know. I'm worried I'm not going to be able to like nail the emotional of this scene. And Tracy would literally be like clapping her hands together and she'd be like, I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be the best writing day ever. And I'd be like, oh, maybe it is going to be the best writing day ever. That had not occurred to me. So it's a lot of fun to work with someone whose emotional vibe is totally different than yours.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Hopefully I didn't drag her down too often.
I guess it pulls you like out of that. If you're in a spiral where, I don't know, the imposter syndrome is setting in and you're just in that uber critical phase where everything you
Yes.
write, you question every single word, and having someone else go, no, this is good. And this is what I do with my editor, with Dana.
Yeah.
Like, I generally at this point, because I'm still recovering from burnout, I need her to tell me that a book is good. I can't see it anymore because of the burnout. But she's like my guiding light. She will tell me if something's not working. And if it isn't working, she will tell me how to fix it. And there's something about having somebody that solid that you know you can rely on, who has the skills to just lift you out of that bad place.
Yes. And it's hard because the part of ourselves that is critical of our writing is important. It's important to be critical of ourselves because we're delivering a product that other people are putting time and energy into. When a reader downloads our book and pays money for it and spends their time on it, we want to be delivering a product that is worthy of that. But at the same time, when we're the only person in charge of quality control, it's hard. It's hard to be both the critical voice and the creator. And we absolutely need those people who can read it, whose opinion we trust, who we know they have a good editorial eye, and they say, yeah, this is great. This is so good. The chemistry is amazing. Yeah, maybe you do need to pull back a little on this one part, or maybe you got a little too slapsticky. That's a thing I have a problem with sometimes. I grew up watching Lucille Ball. So every once in a while, the slapstick takes over, and then someone will be like, no, 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 you're sacrificing the hero's hotness for the joke. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I want the hero to be hot, not a joke. You need that editorial eye, right? You need someone you trust, and it can be a critique partner. It can be a very trusted beta reader. The good content editor is worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, I couldn't do this without Dana. So yeah. And I currently don't have a critique partner, so she's it for me.
She's it. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I guess is like taking that relationship we developed with Tracy. There's a kind of a mentorship in that. Like there's mentorship opportunities in everything. You work with Smarty Pants as well. So there's
Yeah.
always mentorship opportunities and learning from other authors. And there's always something, no matter where you are in your career, there's always something new to learn.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's important that you're not just open to learning things, which is huge. Yes. But that you are open to having new people in your creative circle. A long time ago, probably a decade ago, I read an article in The Atlantic that was this like deep dive analysis of creativity and how you get in a little creative whirlpool almost. And it is amazing and wonderful. But at some point, you need to bring new people into the mix to keep your own creativity fresh. And the example I remember thinking about at the time was the Johnny Depp, Tim Burton, Helena Bonham Carter creative pool. They've done so many good things together. But when it's only the three of them, their things start to feel the same over and over again. You know, like you can look at like a 15, 20 years worth of work of them collaborating where it sort of feels the same after a while. And then when you take one of them out and put them in a new pool, you get magic again.
Yeah.
The work that Helena Bonham Carter did, for example, on the Harry Potter movies is fantastic in a way that's different from the work she did on other things. Love or hate for Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling aside, that's not an issue to discuss today. Just purely her performance in the movies is great and slightly different than what she did for other things.
Yeah, and that makes me think of the criticism against Jack Antonoff on Tortured Poets Department. A lot of people unhappy that Taylor works with Jack so much because they've decided that everything he writes sounds the same. I don't agree, but it's the same thing. Yeah, you work with the same person so much, and then she adds in Aaron Dessner, and you can tell when it's a Jack track or when it's an Aaron Dessner track.
Yeah. It's important to mix things up, but it's also, I had not analyzed her work in that great a detail, but I've been watching videos of people who are remixing on their own songs over multiple albums. And I wonder if those are like Jack to Jack songs that they're pairing up. But the pairings are really cool.
Yeah.
I've seen people who are pairing Getaway Car with The Bolter. And I'm trying to think of what the other one was.
Well, I sent you one last night.
Oh, yeah.
Last night, it was Loss of My Life and Dark Horse.
Yes.
White Horse? Is it White Horse?
White Horse. Yes. Thematically, and I don't know if that's like an accident of her working with the same people on two songs and it matching, or if it was an accident that then became purposeful, or if it was always purposeful from the beginning. Taylor, whenever you want to show up and talk about these things with us, we'll be down for it. But until then, we're just going to enjoy the magic.
Yeah. And I guess that's something similar that we could do to ourselves, possibly off topic, but the way she seems to reference past works that always sends us back in a loop. I wonder if there's something we can do with that beyond just the cameo Easter eggs. I guess authors do it with second generation books when they write the children. Same kind of thing, like they're building off of these children that were developed or created in their parents' books.
I always think that's a little bit of
I think it's hard to do.
tricky road. It's hard to do. Yeah. If you look at, I know Star Wars is not the thing we normally talk about, but I'm going to briefly segue into Star Wars and how tricky it was to have Kylo Ren as the child of Princess Leia and Han Solo. I'm an original trilogy Star Wars girl. Those were I grew up with those. And for so many people of my generation, and I don't know, maybe every generation, the Princess Leia Han Solo romantic chemistry is foundational to what I find appealing. The competent princess who's emotionally vulnerable with rough around the edges, gruff, but competent in a totally different way. That pairing is magic for so many people. And I love also the Kylo Ren Reylo magic, right? I love their chemistry. But in my mind, I have to divorce the fact that Ben Solo is Kylo Ren and that all of the magic that was Princess Leia and Han Solo somehow created an end to marriage and genocidal maniac. Like,
Yeah.
I have to divorce that in my head. So I'm going to say, I don't personally want to write generational romances like that because the emotional baggage is not what I want my characters to impart.
Yeah.
Like, part of my reader promise is that we're making emotional progress, not fucking up our children.
Yeah. My problem is that all of my characters have some kind of parental damage. All of them.
Yes.
And most
All of them.
authors the same. It's the easiest thing possible is to look at their parents. The reason they resist their falling in love is always traced back, most of the time traced back to their parents. Something that happens with their parents makes them put up the no way block.
Yeah.
And writing second gen, what would I give them as damage?
Right. Like, the best possible damage that you can give them if you're writing the second generation is their parents loved one another too much. No, I'm not saying no one can do it.
I just don't want to.
I don't want to do it. Yeah, I don't want to do it. That feels like a bridge too far for me in terms of, God, that's hard. So
yeah, I guess another example of it, though, of this like taking past work and recreating it in some way in the future. Some authors rework their past works. I don't know if I want to do that, but the other option is writing companions to fill in the gap of what's missing today.
I also think that you can revisit the same themes over and over again without necessarily revisiting exactly the same story. One of the things you and I have talked about dealing with in this podcast is, this is like in the brainstorming phase, we've talked about going back and pairing up songs where she's telling the same story from different perspectives over and over again. Because obviously she does it in the Betty James Cardigan trilogy, but I think she does it in other songs also with a lighter hand. She does it in other songs across albums where she's sort of revisiting elements. And it's a little bit of the Easter egg thing, but I think it's also just her diving deep on themes over and over again.
Yeah, she's not
and as writers, I think we do that. We dive deep on the same themes over and over again because that's the emotional garbage that we're dealing with probably in our own internal life that is part of how we're processing it, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if we just jump on, collaboration expands beyond just the artist, the author collaborations. Like, it's easy to go, yeah, let's do co-writes. That's the collaboration. There's more to it than that. And in Taylor's case, we've got collaboration with producers, which in my view, from the author perspective, is the editors, the cover designers, maybe we're hiring PR people. It's everyone you employ to build your brand and create the product, really. So in Taylor's case, she has her producers, and I find this interesting that the producers have changed with her progression of music. So like starting with Nathan Chapman for her country era, moving to Max Martin for a pop era, and then you got Jack Antonoff and Aaron Dessner in this new phase that seems more natural to her people she works with evolve as she evolves and change as she needs. I think it's the same thing for us as authors. Like, we need that producer aspect of the relationship to develop our content, our books, but we also need them to change in some ways. So, like, I guess if you decided to change genres, like maybe it's not about keeping the same team. Maybe at some point it's like, I write contemporary, but if I decided to write dark mafia romance, never going to happen. Maybe I need a different editor. The same with cover designers.
Oh, for sure.
My cover designer is incredible at dark romance, but I use her for contemporary stuff. I'm one of her lighter authors, but I'm employing a separate designer with doing a sidestep into some illustrated covers. And she can't do that because Illustrator is a lot more light and fluffy. There's a point in our process where we need these people and maybe we need different people.
Yes, I absolutely agree. An example for this is my very first editor when I first sold to Harlequin was Brenda Chin, who is amazing. And she's freelance now, and I still go back to her for some things, but I don't go back to her for everything, partly because she does such a dense dive that I don't always have time to do that level of pull things apart reconstruction, but also because she's so good at the big stuff that if I'm writing a novella that's sort of short and straightforward, I know where I'm going with that. I don't necessarily need her to do the whole tear it apart. A lot of times I will go to her if I have repeatedly gotten the feedback that something's wrong and no one else can tell me what it is. That's when I go to her and I'm like, tell me what it is. And she always can. And as soon as she says it, I'm like, damn it, why didn't I see that? But that's what she's amazing at. It'll always be like, well, if you start in this point of view instead and you give us a setup in this character's point of view and then you move to this other thing. And I'm like, yes. But I don't need that for everything. For some things, I just need the whole like, let's move this scene around or let's just tweak this character or have you really gotten this person's motivation on the page? That stuff. So it is, you need different people in your life for different things. And it's amazing if you work in the industry long enough to know who to go to for what. Here's a thing I think authors don't necessarily talk about enough, which is just staying in the industry long enough to get the experience and the self-knowledge and the self-awareness of your writing to know yourself and your process and to know enough people to be able to like pull who you want when. And I think that's one of those things that's amazing about where Taylor Swift is in her career, right? She's been here, gosh, how long has she been here now? Is it 25 years? Probably not quite 25.
32, she's 34. What was she, like 15? She was like 13 starting, wasn't she? She was very young. So
Yeah.
yeah, a while. At least 20 years for her, I think.
Yeah. And she's at a point now where she knows herself as an artist. She knows her limits. She knows what she has worked on and what she's purposefully grown. You shared that clip the other day with me of her acceptance speech or something where she was talking about moments in her career where she purposefully chose to work on different aspects of her craft. She chose to develop herself. Yeah, you got to stick around long enough to get to that point. You got to stick around to know what you're great at intuitively, what you need to work on, who can help you with which things, and form friendships and relationships that can benefit everybody.
Yeah. That comes down to the skill point we discussed earlier. There's a certain skill set that you need, and it doesn't have to come from another author, it can come from an editor. But you have to be in a position to recognize that you need that skill and you don't have it.
Yeah. One of the things that happens, I think, there's a tipping point in your writing career where you start to realize all the things you don't know. And I think that's probably where imposter syndrome sets in for a lot of people. And I think there is a mythology in art in general that art is natural talent rather than craftsmanship. There's this idea that you are a natural storyteller, you're a natural musician. It's just God-given talent, and not that, okay, the people who are good are doing work all the time. And however naturally good you are, at some point you're like, whoa, I'm not as good as I want to be. And then you get that like imposter syndrome hitting you over the head. And you have to be able to move past that to say, okay, no one is as good as they want to be. What do they do to develop their skill set?
Yeah. And the other thing, something I've picked up from a friend of mine, I'm reading one of her books. It's ticking off and going viral. And we just had a conversation about how her relationship with her editor at the time, her editor was going through a process of trying to learn a new system and trying to apply it to her book for the first time. And they had hell with the book. And since this book, they've figured it out and gone back to what was their original process before the learning happened. Sometimes it's about choosing the right editor, but it's also about making sure that the process they use fits you, even if they decide to change the process. Beyond just picking the editor for genre and style, sometimes it's about literally, it's just it's the way they work. Like Dana, for me, is incredible. I can write anything I want, and she will slash it down to the most core emotions on the page and make it sing in a way that I just can't, because I'm just trying to get out the words in my head. And like you say about overwriting the description, I can overwrite anything I want with Dana. She will still slice it to where it needs to be. And normally she'll pull out the things that I know she was going to pull out. Like, that's a skill set for me that I value, but other authors, that scares them. Like, if you can hand an editor a book at 100K and she can take it down to 80K, that scares a lot of authors. Me, I'm like, thank God, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, me too. Yeah. It's interesting to me how much of all of these relationships are simple chemistry. Just like in any romance, chemistry is everything. And it's true in relationships with other writers and with editors and cover designers, everything. The chemistry is everything. I don't know about you. Have you ever had the experience of trying to write a book where the characters just genuinely did not have chemistry? Like you have an idea of who these people are going to be in your head. And then when you start writing it, it's not working. And you have to like pull back and be like, oh, something about this story doesn't work because the chemistry of the characters is not right. And the chemistry is important. And all of which is to say, your editor or my editor may be great for us. But if someone else hires that person and then is like, nope, not right for me, that's okay. Whoever you are as a writer, you need to find the editor that makes your stuff sing. And it might not be the same one that is fantastic for someone else.
Exactly. And like we said, sometimes it's about looking at the Jack Antonoff, Aaron Dessner side of things with Taylor. Aaron Dessner tends to be all the piano stuff. So if Taylor's got a slow song, she seems to hand it to Aaron, or she works with Aaron on it. The more poppy stuff Jack comes in on, and you can always expect him to do his key changes halfway through. There's a style thing there. They have a style that you're aware of when you're working with them, that you can then go, okay, no, this book needs this editor, this book needs that editor. Same with the cover designers. Like, if you need illustrated, you go to one designer. If you need discrete, maybe you go to another. If you write sports, maybe there's this one editor that's amazing at sports, but they can't do mafia. It very much like, we do this thing with cover designers where we ask for recommendations, and it's like, no, let's be a little more specific. What do you write and what vibe do you want? Because like Kirsty from Pretty Little Design Co., she's inherently dark on her covers because she majorly runs towards dark romance, but she does contemporary for me. But my contemporary covers are still dark with her. They're not the bright colors that you would normally expect.
Yeah.
It's like there's a style choice that even comes into the cover designers that you can make.
Yeah.
Jumping on to like the co-writing and the featured artists part, Taylor's list of featured artists, like people that have come in on her songs, people she's co-written with, people whose other songs she's featured on, is like a mile long.
Yes, it's amazing.
Top of the list, Ed Sheeran, Bon Iver with Exile and Evermore. You've got her collaborations with The National, Big Red Machine, Lana Del Rey, Haim Sisters. It goes on and on and on. And I think in this aspect, we should view the other artists as authors in our cases. So it's the co-writing, contributing to anthologies, writing multi-author series or shared worlds.
Yeah.
I haven't done a lot of this other than anthologies. So I'm kind of like handing this to you to expand on.
And I've talked about some of it already, but I have done a lot of it. I've done shared worlds in the Penny Reed stuff. I've done collaborative worlds where it's just like a loose collaboration where it's, 6 different authors all writing Navy SEALs or whatever. I've done deeper stuff where Kat Baxter and I have a series, like a mini series. It's just 3 novellas where I wrote the sister story and then she wrote both of the brothers. There's a little bit of overlap there where like there will be shared scenes in the multiple books, things like that. And the characters walk on and off the page. There's shared family history there. That kind of stuff is just fun. If you can have that sort of cameo walk on relationship with another author, that's a lot of fun. And it's sort of the lowest entryway, I think, of effort. You've got to know the person well enough to say, like, hey, you have a bunch of stories set in this small town. My characters are driving through that part of the country. Can my characters stop and eat at the diner that you reference all the time?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Very low entry, very low maintenance, super fun. You just kind of have to make sure that it works.
It fits, yeah.
The bigger shared world, like with the Penny Reed stuff where everything's happening in Green Valley, that's a lot more work. It can be super rewarding, especially when you have readers who want to read everything set in Green Valley. That's amazing. I know that there's and this is where you probably need external tools to help. Like with the Green Valley, there is a private wiki that the authors have access to where they can upload different information about all kinds of stuff. For me, I actually have not written in Green Valley. I've written in the Smarty Pants world, in the academic world, like the educated romance branch. I tried to write a book in Green Valley and I found it really hard because it's that thing where I spend too much time describing setting. And even if I'm going to pull back stuff later, the initial me describing the setting, I got really stuck on like, how do these characters walk through a house together if I don't know what exactly the house looks like? It was really weird. I got in my own head. That was hard. And I had to pull back on that project for other reasons that were personal. But part of it was I didn't feel like I knew enough about what the town looked like to physically write in it, even though I'd read a ton of Green Valley books. And this is a thing as an author, I think people need to be aware of that, like what you need as an author versus what the reader needs are 2 totally different things. Authors always talk about this with research, where the level of research an author needs or the level of world building an author needs is way deeper than anything that the casual reader is going to be interested in. But you still need to understand it. And this is so true if you're dealing with fantasy or science fiction. You need to understand the physics of the world in a way the reader is never going to need to know.
Yeah. This is just something that I struggled with not even doing. Like, I haven't done any of these shared worlds, but there's a point. So I did a master's degree in script writing. And one of the only real ways of getting into TV in the UK was to write on what we called like junior shows. We had Doctors and we had EastEnders and all of these long-running soaps that are very formulaic and they follow the same patterns. And essentially what happens with shows like EastEnders is there's a story conference where a bunch of writers and producers get together and they set the entire arc for the whole year. And then that gets divvied out into episodes, and a writer that is totally unconnected to all of that brainstorming process gets handed this episode. They're told they have to hit specific beats in an episode and they can have one storyline. So like if it's Doctors, it's the medical storyline. They can have one storyline that's completely unconnected, but the characters have to hit these beats. But you have no clue of the detailed history of this show. EastEnders has been running for freaking years. Like, it's impossible to know the family history of every single character that's been through that show. But you're handed a brief and you have to run with it. And the thought of like writing one of these episodes and getting a character dynamic wrong because you haven't seen the millions of episodes that have come before and don't have a fact file like that, I just never did it.
That sounds incredibly hard, like
So yeah,
so difficult. I can't even imagine.
this is why I never did it. And I think I'd have the same reaction to doing a Shade World on that level, like the fear that you would just. All the voices are different. So when I did character crossovers, I haven't written one yet. And I was going to put this in our next section, but it fits in both. My friend AJ Wyatt, before she unpublished her mafia romances, there was just a tiny cameo that my readers would have recognized. Basically, she put my band Rhiannon into their engagement party. My band unknowingly played for a mafia boss. And it was funny for us to go, yeah, there's this little nugget there. And she just described him, like the characters, in a way and named them. And my readers, if they were reading AJ's books, would have picked it up immediately. And there's other authors that do this. I've just found out that Melanie Harlow and Corinne Michaels, like there's a couple of their series where they do a lot of crossovers, characters appearing here and there and everything. And this is something that my friend Kayla Campbell she has a website for rockstar authors called romancerockbands.com. And part of it has it's like a wiki. So you upload all the details on your bands and it could go full on into like singles and everything into the detail of what a real musician might have on their Wikipedia page. But there's also a button for us authors to tick that says it's open to crossovers.
Oh, that's cool.
There's tools there for rockstar authors to do something like this, but I find a lot of people just do it between their friends.
Yeah.
And I did do it on a slightly smaller level with my book, Acting Council. I name dropped another author's book because my actors were getting into producing themselves. And they chose Paula Dombrowiak's newest book, Beautiful Lies. I basically wrote that they were adapting the book to be their first film. I just wrote it and sent it to Paula, and she was like, that's amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. This is like the Easter egg thing, right?
Cross universes outside of your own. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, you want to like talk with authors and make sure that it's okay, but
Yeah.
generally it's going to be good.
Yeah, exactly. We could do an entire episode on this, but like, what would your tips be for authors trying to find a co-author for the first time?
Oh gosh, trying to find a co-author. This is a good tip anyway. Make friends with other authors in a non-Machiavellian way. You want to be friends with authors anyway, especially if it's authors whose work you love. Reach out to them and ask, and be aware of what you're asking. Don't reach out to, like, I'm never going to reach out to Pippa Grant and be like, hey, I think you and I have similar voices. We should co-write. I love her books. I think we do have similar voices. I'm not going to ask her to co-write with me because where we are in our career, like she's way more successful than I am at this moment. But if I wanted to shoot her an email and say, hey, I really loved this book. Is it okay with you if my character is reading it? I suspect that would be okay. But beyond that, I think meet people online or in person. If you have the opportunity to go to conferences and meet people in person, that is where a lot of magic happens. I think you and I can speak to that because we met at 20 Books last year and here we are. But then I also think being aware of, if you're going into, not necessarily how can you find someone to collaborate, but as you are going into that, I'm going to assume that the magic of finding the person happens already. But set up some ground rules as you're going into it, like establish the idea of, we're going to try this for fun and let's see how it works. If we get 2 chapters into a draft and the chemistry of 2 people working together is not working at all, pull back. I wouldn't immediately meet a stranger and be like, let's you and I write a book together. I would be like, let's see if our 2 worlds can brush a little bit and overlap, and then like go from there. I think the times that I have met someone and been like, hey, let's write a book together, I've been really lucky. When Shelley Roberts and Tracy Wolf and I wrote the International Kissing Club, we didn't know each other that well. And one of the reasons it worked was because we had clearly defined expectations of what the book was going to be. And we were writing individual characters. The story lended itself to, it was 4 friends in high school, and we each took one character, and then we sort of co-wrote the 4th. I think that if there's someone you're interested and you've done a little bit of shared world stuff and you're ready to actually try writing a collaborative thing, try it with one person gets one point of view and one person gets the other point of view. Do dual POV and someone has the heroine and the other one has the hero. Or if it's not a romance, that's even better because then there's a little bit less intertwined, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That helps because you're not sort of mucking around in the other person's actual words as much if you have separate POVs.
Yeah. Majorly it's a style thing. Like, I would have loved to have co-written with AJY at one point, but our styles were drastically different. Like, we were critique partners, but our styles were drastically different and it just would not have merged very well. Sometimes there is that practicality to it, so it'd be logical. Like, if it's too different, then it's not a good idea.
Yes. If you've got 2 people working in the same section of text and their voices are not very meshable, it's a whole nother layer of work, right? Because it's just like a whole nother editorial layer to try and make the voices mesh if they don't mesh automatically.
Exactly. Probably a nightmare. But the other aspect, I guess, is being aware of like the legal stuff.
Yeah.
Same as setting expectations, set down the legal expectations. What happens if you brainstorm something and it doesn't work out? Does that world just sit dead, or have you established some kind of division?
Yes. All of that is important. And that's another area where I've been really lucky. It doesn't necessarily have to be like legal paperwork filed with the state or whatever, but if you just have some sort of written agreement of this is what we intend, this is our intention going into it, and we agree not to be total jerks about it. But yeah, we're going to move forward from this place. Yeah, I think that is a very good idea. And I think just on an emotional level, you kind of have to agree to not be precious about your own work. You have to be at a place where you can take criticism and know that it's for the betterment of the story. And you also have to know your process well enough to know when in your process you can take criticism. Personally, when I'm drafting, I suck at taking criticism. Anytime in that first draft, I only want praise. I have to tell people that when I'm sending bits to my critique partner or whatever. I'll be like, I only want praise. Tell me this is beautiful.
Yeah.
And then once the draft is done, I'm like, now I need criticism. But you have to know yourself well enough to know, because you don't want to jump into a relationship with someone and you have not set those expectations clearly. They jump in hypercritical because they're trying to make the book better and you're not ready for it. And then it can quickly fall apart.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so much trust that's needed, right?
There's a lot of time to put in as well.
It is.
Pretty plays to our deepest fears. So
Yes.
being sure in yourself before you do it is probably a good thing, because we don't deal with criticism well in the first place. And when it comes from somebody when we're not expecting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little bit like embarking on a sexual relationship with someone, right? There's so much trust that needed. There's so much intimacy. Don't pick up a stranger at a bar and expect it to be magical and perfect. Lay some groundwork on the relationship. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think it speaks to Taylor's flexibility as an artist that she keeps inviting different people in.
Well, she also does keep inviting in some of the same people.
True.
She's learned who she works well with and chooses to continue working with them while, I don't know, stepping a toe outside of her comfort zone and trying to work with somebody else. She doesn't throw herself fully into a brand new collaboration. There's steps involved. Our last point on this is we kind of covered a bit of it. Like, for me, it's name drops and cross promotion. So part of name drops for me is the Charlie Puth reference.
Yeah.
In Tortured Poet Department.
Yeah.
His Google searches skyrocketed the week the album released. Just from one name drop. We can do things like that in our books, and that's what I did with Polar. And we can do it in other ways as well. So for me, immediately what comes to mind for me is like Madeline Ellis does this thing on her characters' birthdays where she gets other rockstar authors to write a birthday message for her character from the perspective of one of their rock stars.
Oh, cool.
A bunch of us wrote birthday messages for one of her characters last year, and her readers love it, but it's also gives them little tiny, I don't know, they read a message from a character that they've never read before, and some of them go off and look for the character in that book and go and read it. It's little low level things that are subtle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
But again, just like Taylor's listeners love the Easter eggs, they love the subtle. Readers love the subtle also. So give them opportunities to find that and have fun with it.
There's a point where I need to be more overt about my Easter eggs, basically. I'm too good at hiding them. And for a little while, I need to be more overt. I need to tell them that they're there. And that's an okay thing. If you're at a start of your career and you're still building a readership, it's okay to point these things out at the start.
Yeah.
The time will come where they'll basically pick it up for you. But until then, I'm just going to start hinting at it.
Yes. Yeah.
Quickly, before we wrap this up, places authors could do to expand on cross-promotion with other authors. We do it with social media, we do it with newsletter swaps, giveaways, the Instagram giveaways where you cross-promote with other authors. We could be doing guest blogging. A lot of us moved away from blogging. It's something I'm going to start looking at again, more in a strategic SEO front for my store. It's on my list to basically write a blog post that recommends rockstar books from other authors who have direct stores. So I'll basically do a quick brief on top 10 or something rockstar books, and every link will direct to that author's store, so that then we're all cross pushing each other on search results.
Yeah.
Podcasts, there are a bunch of reader podcasts. I have not looked into applying to any of them. I think I'm just going to get used to us chatting for a while.
Yes.
But we're going to be doing a live release party for my next book on the 23rd of May with a bunch of other authors, which is going to be interesting to see how that develops.
So fun.
But that's the same thing, isn't it? Going to get on a call with a bunch of my author friends, and my readers will tune in then or after and listen to us chat, and they might go off and read their books, or your readers might join, and it's exposure, which is ideal for what we need. But it's a lower level, less effort exposure, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's less set in print. Commitment, right?
Yeah. It's a time and place, and then it's done. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers us on collaborations.
Yes.
It's another long episode.
We need to have another moment to just appreciate the amazing collaboration of Post Malone in the Fortnite video and how awesome that turned out. Yeah.
Just
the chemistry between them was amazing. Yeah.
That chemistry came across with no words. It's insane.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Right. We have decided that for the next couple of weeks, we're going to wrap up with Kiss, Marry, Kill in recognition to Torch Poets and So High School. I'm going to let you go first this time.
Okay.
Are we doing Kiss or Kill first?
Let's do Kiss and then Kill and then end on Marry. That's what we did last time, right?
Yeah, let's do that.
My Kiss for this week is Clara Bow, because it's just an awesome song, and I love it. My Kill for this week is Robin. I know last week you said you felt like it was because you're not a mom and you're not interested in motherhood and it didn't resonate. It's fine. And there's parts of it I like, but it doesn't resonate as much. Maybe it's because my kids are older now, because it really does feel like it's speaking to that young kid. Maybe that's why it's not resonating with me, but I can live without it this week. And as for my Marry, I'm going to go with So High School.
I don't think that needs an explanation.
Yeah.
That song's amazing. Okay, my Kiss is gonna be I'm Gonna Get You Back. Because it's just such an upbeat song, and upbeat, unhinged song.
Yes.
Unhinged is a theme of this album that I really like.
Yeah.
And my Kill is gonna be Thank You, Amy. It's my second skip track. I like the message, but it's not top of the list for me. And my Marry is going to be But Daddy, I love him.
Ah, yeah.
Because every time I hear it, I see Jane Austen and Lydia marrying Mr. Wickham every single time. It just doesn't get old for me.
Yeah. So do we think Matt Healy is Wickham?
I think it changes every verse.
Yeah.
I think they're right. It changes every verse, and the final verse is Travis. But the first two verses are probably Matt Healy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a great note to end on.
Basically, our perceptions of these tracks change every week. So,
yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
And it's okay to love something one week and not the next.
Exactly. Yeah. You never know when you're going to suddenly decide to skip a track. So it's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, wrapping things up, thank you so much for joining us for another long episode.
Yes. And hopefully you are learning things and just enjoying the conversation.
Yeah. We will catch you next week for another round of, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but we'll dig more into Torture Poetry Department, probably.
Probably.
All right. Bye.